the future of digital transformation, emerging technologies, and trends shaping business success. In this episode, Kramer, the founder of Cooperative Computing, explores the emerging technologies and trends that will define the next wave of digital transformation. You'll learn which innovations to watch and when to adopt them, how AI and automation are reshaping business operations, and practical ways to future-proof your digital strategy. I'm your co-host Anthony Pearl, and whether you're just starting your digital journey or looking to accelerate your existing efforts, it's time to get enabled digitally. I think we should talk in this particular episode about the challenges that businesses are facing, particularly in implementing across those 5 key business segments, because there are a bunch of different challenges, and we touched on some in previous episodes, but I think it's really important to look at what exactly some of these are that are common for businesses, and then obviously how we might suggest they overcome some of them.
Yeah. And I think in this space, there's probably, we call these pills, right? The things that are impacting your ability to get from where you're at today to where you are in the future that are, they're not about tech, they're about human elements, right? One of those is legacy thought leadership. The way that we operate as leaders has been handed down time after time after time after time. I've got to have an HR department. I've got to have an IT department. I have to have a legal department. I've got to have. So the legacy thought leadership has been around a long time, and it's hard to overcome that because it's what we were saying about change and the 2 X's, right? The first X is it's easier to do what I always have known how to do, and therefore it takes away something that may be really difficult because innovating in that space is hard. So legacy thought leadership is one of the things that happen that really get us to where we are. The second thing is the art of possible, and knowing what the art of possible is. And that ability to keep up with that rate of change is really hard. So you need someone to help you shift your legacy thought leadership. You need someone to help you with understanding the art of possible, right? And then the risk of failure has gone way down, and most people haven't noticed it. And those critical factors and the ability to understand them lead us to some of the things that we do, siloed organizations, non-integrated systems. The customer looks different within my organization across different parts of my organization. My metrics and the performance that I'm measured is not consistent for the outcomes I need as a unified organization. These key attributes are driven by those 3 things. And so the non-unified customer, the non-integrated systems, the growth bottlenecks, the disparate data sources, all of these things are driven by those 3. And so overcoming those 3 and understanding how to do that in a way that's not going to crush an organization and is organized and structured is what our digital enablement strategy does for you. It helps you think through, how do I organize it? How do I put it in the order? But how do I make certain that I'm overcoming what we call the enterprise struggles? And I'm doing so in a way that I'm learning how to take those 3 core principles: legacy thought leadership, art of possible, and the ability to not have myself not know there's less risk in doing stuff, and overcome those while I'm overcoming those, what we call the enterprise struggles.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many challenges for businesses in implementing this, but the tendency seems to be, if I'm not mistaken, tends to still be around the technology, right? And that's, goes back to what we've been talking about previously, in that it's not just about the technology, but for many, that's the focus, isn't it? It's just there's this pressure in saying, we've got to get technology where can we bring technology in? Let's bring technology in. And it's not so much about what they're trying to achieve.
Well, technology is seen as the thing you huddle around, and if you huddle around it, it's going to bring you this magic that's going to get an outcome that you can't get without that magic. And it's so evident to us as we see it in the world around us that, oh, look at all this stuff that technology is enabled to, that we think that way. And therefore, our first mindset is to go find some tech without understanding where we're really at on the key people who are going to have to use the tech, right? And the I gave you an example earlier of uh, automating intralogistics and the fact that as you get this swarm of robots that are starting to do things inside your, logistics centers, the robot control systems are super important. So a lot of people go out and do a bunch of evaluation around, hey, I've got all these systems that I can roboticize. Um, the things that pull stuff off the truck, and then they pull it off the truck and they unpack it, and then they take the things that are unpacked and they do the put up. And I got robots that are going to go do all these things, but I've got to have some sort of fleet management, and I've got to have a way to have the fleet management controller have ever more of those going on simultaneously at the same time, which means somebody's got to be an operator of that fleet management system. And so if we think about the core components of how you integrate and enable across those with digital enablement, and you think about it being the fact that I've got to be able to say, what is it I want to enable? What's the outcome I want? How do I make certain my organization is ready for that organizational change management? How do I make certain that I have it adopted in the right areas at the speed I want, but I'm not having to rip it out over and over again? That planning process, that organizational methodology for how you do that in an elegant fashion and adopt those things that are pertinent and useful to you is critical to the success of this integrated and unified 5 segments, and how you make certain that things across them touch each other in a way that's meaningful. If you ever walk inside an Amazon plant, and I'm just using that because that's the one I've seen the most, there's an orchestration of equipment moving things from point A to point B, and that orchestration was built around the outcomes that they sought. And let me give you an example. So I have a couple of different ways to move goods between my packaging process and where the goods are stored. And some of those are I could have a unit that would go find it in the storage bin, grab it, bring it over to me, kit it up and ready so I can quickly package it together. Another is to just move the whole bin and let me pull it out myself and then move it back. Well, that may be the most efficient and effective way to start until the units that go grab it out of the bins and bring it to you are more effective than the bin just coming to you and letting you do it yourself. That is not a technology choice. That is a methods and procedures choice. And so if you make the wrong decisions in the wrong order, you go buy this advanced system that's going to go grab stuff out of the bins and bring it to you and not get the right effect that you want, which is how fast, at least in the case of Amazon, can I get materials over into the outbound system because I got to get that toothbrush delivered to your house tomorrow at 2 p.m. Whereas if you're kitting up 130 items, bundling them together, that's going to be really important that you have the kitting system to do that. So the outcome for Amazon is I'm shipping you 40 million things a minute, and I've already got them stuck in the place I need to get them stuck. So I don't need to go grab 5 or 6 things and bundle them together, package them up, and ship them. But if I'm the bundle 5 or 6 things together, package them up, and ship them to you, I'm using a different method and procedure with a different technology to support that outcome. That unified thinking as to what your outcome is that you're seeking to grow what you're growing. For example, you may turn from, you know, I just got to get you a million items out because they have to box it. They're still optimizing the boxing process, and that's getting better every year. And that boxing process has to optimize where it gets onto the truck that's coming to your house, right? And making certain the right things are going to the right places. All of that optimization process has extreme value. And that extreme value of the optimization process has to layer into the person that's utilizing that process. Gets back to that brain. As you have to scale something, you better get more into the primal brain and make your choices about what you're pushing into that primal brain and do so in an organized fashion. And so, to answer the question, how do you make certain the pieces fit together? And what's the challenges to the pieces fitting together? Is people become overzealous about a tech instead of overzealous about making certain these unified systems work together to get the business outcome for the customer.
It's really interesting when you're saying that about Amazon because I think about we've all had this where we've ordered half a dozen things at once. And we get this thing at the end when saying XYZ is going to be delivered on this date and ABC is going to be delivered on another date. And we accept that, right? Because as someone who's consuming those goods, you're thinking, okay, that kind of makes some sense that these goods may not all be coming from the same place, and we accept that they'll come separately. But in the back end of things, Amazon has to make that decision as to
Yes.
what is reasonable to bundle together and what's reasonable for an expectation, because it also depends on the nature of what those items are. Because if they're six unrelated items, one's a piece of technology, one's a book, whatever, one's a cream, then we're going, okay, that's fine, that's reasonable. But if they're all things that we're buying to play together with one another, there's a degree of frustration, which Amazon doesn't want either. And, we have different
But it's
expectations. Go on.
but it's challenged right now on understanding that bundling. That is a challenge that Amazon's facing right now is understanding the bundling because what they're serving for right now is you get what you want when you want it at the value. That is their number one thing is get it to you because you expect getting it the next day over. Did I wait a little bit longer to get five things bundled together because they were all, you know, they're my makeup kit. Now, as they learn how to bundle and get the same result, it's going to take it to the next level. But when you buy a speaker and you buy a monitor and you buy a CPU from three different things on Amazon and you buy a pad and you buy the chair and you get that all, they're going to rush every one of those to your doorstep as fast as they possibly can because that's what they've been rewarded for. They've been less rewarded for packaging that all up and getting it to you as a kit. They don't get rewarded for that so much.
Isn't it fascinating because it is a different mindset with different things. It is thinking about expectations, right? When we go to a restaurant and four of us sit down and order a meal, we would not accept that you get served your entree and 10 minutes later I get served mine. There's
Yes.
an expectation that all four of us sitting down at dinner together are going to get our entrees, our main courses, and our desserts all pretty much at the same time.
Yes. And therefore, you watch how that restaurant that does that operates. In a fast food joint, quite often, I order for five people, they're going to bundle those five people together. But if I order for two people and then I come back and I order for three people and I say all of us are still sitting at the same table, they're going to give you the two and the three at separate times. That but if you set at a restaurant, you'd never expect that to happen. And so that outcome, that business model, what is a customer seeking to get is so important to understand in what you're doing for that customer and how you're putting that together. Because you would never want to get your fries separate from your burger. That wouldn't be unacceptable, or that wouldn't
Yeah,
be
and
acceptable.
absolutely, and it is, and the same thing that, of course, all of these things fall apart when you get a delivery of food and you get it from your fast food place, and you do expect the fries to be coming with it, and suddenly the fries are left at the restaurant or they weren't made,
Yeah.
and that's a whole different dimension of problem that comes in for, whether it's Uber or one of the other
Yeah.
operators, that happens there, because if there's a human element, and that can go astray in that process.
Yeah, and this is a great example of new business models. So, you know, Uber took advantage quickly of the fact that I've got a million cars doing a million things, and I can go get something and deliver it to you. And recently, you'll see some new updates to what they're doing. They're trying to also understand your bundling because they want the experience to be that what showed up at your door was 99.9% of what you wanted when you wanted it at the value you wanted it. And so they're doing some pre-bundling work inside their application before they ever send it on to actual end. It's different than DoorDash. So you're watching this choices system that we said lives forever start to take place, and you're watching business models adopt those choices to rapidly meet the consumer's needs. And that process of putting it on an Uber will evolve at some point to the process of there's a I stick it in a slot. Remember the bank? You put it in the slot, and I stick it in a slot. It whips up. It goes into a cargo container, and that thing just flies over to me at Mach factor 5. And that technology is going to learn how to group itself. I saw someone who had a 5 drone cluster that could carry, I don't know, something in the name of a half a ton. So the choices constantly evolve to meet our needs as a consumer, because the consumer is just the buyer is driving everything. That the buyer is the economy, and all those technologies that adopt have to then handle the operator interfacing with it, the organization, because who ever thought that there would be a drone maintenance company or a drone maintenance function within Walmart?
Yeah. And I mean, that's the interesting thing, right, isn't it? And I think, just to wrap up this discussion of how much innovation is changing the market. And I think, one of the great examples, and I know you and I chatted about it a little bit before we started recording, is in the hospitality area. And you look at hotel chains that have existed for, 100 plus years, and you look at Airbnb that's come into it, that's completely shifted the way we think about uh, booking systems and expectations on what we're going to get when we arrive at a destination.
Yes. And that shifting, um, when you test the shifting, right? Because the theory of operation, that new business model has to say, we believe customers want what they want when they want it, and this is a thing that we believe they're going to want. And as that gets tested and they find it works, and then they have to scale it, it works around those 5 segments, and it does so very effectively because they didn't roll it out to 31 states all at once, and therefore they had a unified strategy. And their operations and order fulfillment said, I got to figure out how to adopt this and do so in a way that's also elegant and operationally efficient. And therefore, the people side mattered because there's someone that's managing those hosts inside 15 states or whatever it is, and making certain that they're doing what they need and that things are clean and concise. So that constant shift in the business model because of choices, and those that are accelerated into it. So we've got some really clear examples of people who've accelerated in the automated economy and who are digitally enabled. And you see their growth strategy. An Airbnb at, 80 billion that dwarfs two or three other hotel chains that are in the space, if you will, for someone who wants to have a place to stay, a shower, a bed, a meal, right? And how do you get that consistent output that enables that person to have a mind shift for it's okay that it's in the basement of something, or you know it's off the side of something because I get it for 20% less or whatever. And then you've got the high end that's starting to show up in those spaces as well.
I think the important thing for people listening to know is that this is the space that you guys are in, that being able to help navigate this and understand where the challenges are and how to operate through those is the key space that people should get in contact with you about, because that's the sweet spot that you can deliver on.
100%. And our passion with digital enablement is that while the world is constantly shifting those choices, both in how people do things operationally, um, both in how organizations need to be digitally enabled themselves, the people, those methods and procedures. Our team is focused on making certain that enablement structure is put inside a business and helps that business do what it needs to do to achieve that automation and accelerate into that automated economy to achieve the growth metrics. So it's our passion. Just like Bill Gates said, someday I'm going to have my operating system on every device in the world that is a computer. Our passion is to make certain that all of our clients that are trying to wade through this shifting of thinking, the things that they have to do differently, have somewhere they can go and get that assistance that they need to do that as rapidly and as effectively as they can in their organizations.
And that's all for this episode of Get Enabled Digitally with Kramer from Cooperative Computing. If you found value in today's conversation about digital enablement, please subscribe and share with colleagues navigating their own transformation journey. For more insights on accelerating into the automated economy, check our show notes for resources and contact information. This show has been produced by podcastdoneforyou.online. I'm Anthony Pearl, and until next time, keep moving forward to get enabled digitally.